Welcome to Raja's Academy. Today we are going to discuss chapter 1 of NCERT textbook of economics. The chapter is titled Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence. So we are going to discuss the state of Indian economy on the eve of independence. What do you mean by the eve of independence? So in this chapter we are going to discuss a period on the eve of independence. That means period right at the time of the British left and right after the British left. That means before, some period before or after 15th August of 1947. We are going to analyze detailed bioprint of what happened in the economy of India, what happened for the economy of India right after the British left, and some point before the British left, what all things British left for us, and what happened right after the exit of British in our Indian economy. We are going to discuss what happened to the Indian economy right after the British left, and how the Indian economy evolved after the exit of the British rule, what they left for us. We are going to discuss in detail each sector of the Indian economy right after the exit of British exit. Okay, we can go through that. Okay, there is a famous quote by Victor Alexander Bruce that is given in a box in the NCERT textbook. It says that India is the pivot of our empire. If the empire loses any other part of its dominance, we can survive. But if we lose India, the sun of our empire will have set. Okay, Victor Alexander Bruce gave much importance to India as an empire, and if we lose that empire, our sun will set. That is the thing given inside the box. We can analyze each and everything that will continue in the sense of this definition. Okay, we are going to analyze the situations in the Indian economy after the British left. Beforehand, we have to go into the past of our country. What was the British rule, how British governed us, what they ruined or looted from us, everything have to be detailed studied. What was the intention of the British rule? Every one of us know that British rule didn't aim it at making India a richer country. Their aim was to make themselves a richer country, richest country and richer country. Okay, their sole aim was their own growth by looting our raw materials. So British came to India for making our country a market for themselves, for making our country a supplier of raw material. So they utilized India in many ways. Everything of India was utilized by them for their own benefit and their own gain. Okay. The sole purpose of the British colonial rule in India was to reduce the country to being a raw material supplier for Great Britain. Britain had many colonies at that time, many colonies. The mother Britain aimed for making these colonies into a mere supplier of raw material for their own country and becoming rich. They also utilized India for that. India was considered as a mere supplier of raw material. Once upon a time, India was a developed country more than Britain. So their evil eye followed us, and they started to convert our country into a supplier of raw material, and they utilized their raw material for making their own product and selling their product in our country. And there were many local artisans and handicraft industries pushing in our own country. It was very indigenous industries, and there was very skilled people in that industry too. They looted their skills, and they also started to exploit us to buy their finished goods. In that way they looted our resources in much extent. There was a term called British mercantilism. What is British mercantilism? That was the core ideology put forward by British people, British governance towards India. What is British mercantilism? Now we are going to talk about British mercantilism. That was the core policy of the British people or British government. British mercantilism focused on promotion and protection policy of the economic interest of their home country than with the development of the Indian economy. British mercantilism focused on two P's. The two P's are promotion and protection. They give importance to the promotion of their own goods and protection of the goods in their raw materials in their country. They looted our resources, but they protected their own resources and promoted their goods in our country. That was their policies, and they succeeded in that and looted our majority of our resources for them, their gain. Okay. Now we are going to discuss what was the aspect or what was the condition of the national income at that time, at the time of governance of British people. British government did not give any attempt to measure the national income of our country. They did not does not give any attempt to estimate India's national and per capita income. That was the sole growth of the economy can be identified by measuring the national and per capita income of the people. They don't even try to estimate, they don't even give a single attempt to estimate the national and per capita income of the country. But some economists like Dadabhai Naoroji, the name is given in the textbook itself. There are some notable estimators for the national income and per capita income of our country at that time, where the government, British government continually did not give any attempt to measure the national income, but some notable estimators like Dadabhai Naoroji, William Digby, Finlay Shiras and VKRV Rao and R.C. Desai. 5 names are given here: Dadabhai Naoroji, Digby, Finlay Shiras, VKRV Rao and R.C. Desai. These people, these economists give importance for measuring national income at the time where the British governed, where they ignored a single attempt to measure it. Among them, it was we can stress on the name VKRV Rao, whose estimates during the colonial period was very significant at that time. On the first half of the 20th century, the national income he estimated was less than 2%. The national income he estimated was less than 2%, coupled with a mere 0.5% growth in per capita output. Per capita output at the last part of the 20th century was growing only merely 0.5%. It was very poor in the terms of the national accounts, and in terms of the economic estimators, it was purely very low. Okay, now we can analyze each sector, what happened to each sector at the time of British rule and right after the British rule. Okay, we can go first we can go into the or analyze the agriculture sector. We all know that agriculture and allied activities are included in the primary sector. You people, all of you know that there are 3 sectors in an economy: primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sector. Agriculture and allied activities are included in which sector? It's in the primary sector. And secondary sector includes industry and manufacturing, and tertiary sector includes service sector. Among these 3 sectors, agriculture sector was very important. Right now also agriculture sector is very important. Okay, we can analyze what happened to the agriculture sector at the time of the British rule and right after the British rule. Okay, there is a data given here. About 85% of the country's population lived mostly in villages. Villages are stressed here, and derived livelihood directly or indirectly from the agriculture. Most of the people, 85% of the people living especially in the villages, directly or indirectly depend upon the agriculture sector for their livelihood. Directly or indirectly means directly on agriculture, indirectly means on the allied activities like fisheries and other things. They are depending directly or indirectly on the agriculture and allied activities for their livelihood at the time of British government or British rule itself. We can see in this box what the French traveller said. The French traveller named Bernier said, actually the British I have acquired of Bengal in 2 visits inclines me to believe that it's richer than the Egypt. He had travelled to the state of Bengal at the time of British rule, and he is saying that Bengal is richer than the Britain at that time. So Bengal, the land of famine, nowadays or after the British rule or given at the time of British rule, before the arrival of Britain, was richer than the Britain. That was said or analyzed by the famous French traveller Bernier. Okay, most of the people, 85% of the people depend upon agriculture and allied activity. Now we are going to analyze, was the agriculture was profitable for that people who depend upon the agriculture sector? We can clearly say a no to that answer, because agriculture sector was not incentivized at all. agriculture sector was not incentivized at all means people depend upon the agriculture sector for their livelihood, but production was very low and contribution to the GDP was very low, and government didn't incentivize the agriculture sector in that sense. They didn't give any attempt for addressing the problem of the agrarian people. They were focusing upon the sectors where GDP, the contribution to GDP was very high. In that sense, the British government ignored the agriculture sector and they didn't incentivize the agriculture sector in that sense. So, agriculture sector, there was a little growth, but the growth was not noticeable or the growth was not profitable for the farmers or those who engage in the agriculture activities. And also, agriculture productivity become low. And there was a system called Zamindari system in some part of India at that time, in Bengal, Bombay Presidency, and that area there was a system called Zamindari system where Zamindars become the whole proprietorship of that agrarian economy. They looted the agriculture people, they were collecting huge tax from the agrarian people and they were consolidating their land, and they used the fragmented land and they leased the fragmented land for another activity and looted the agrarian people. So, Zamindari system existed in some part of Bengal Presidency and Bombay Presidency, which was not favorable towards the agrarian people but favorable towards the British governance. Zamindars were appointed as the intermediary people and they collected tax for the British people. The effect of Zamindari system was the Zamindars given the plight of a burdenhood to the farmers there. The farmers are going to face a huge debt at that time, and the government also does not give any attention to the plight of the farmers there. Also, there is a problem of commercialization of agriculture at that time. What is commercialization of agriculture? There are two kind of agriculture or two kind of crops, cash crops and food crops, and they were focusing, British people were focusing upon the commercial crops. They incentivized the commercial crops. They engaged in mass trade of the commercial crops which earned them money, and the subsistence crops or food crops were not given many attention. India at that time, most of the agrarian people or farmers were producing the subsistence or food crops, and they did not give any incentives or any subsidies or protection to those farmers who produced the subsistence or food crops, but they give importance to the commercial crops or cash crops which earn them money. Okay, that's all about the agriculture sector. The agriculture sector was in a backward position. There was a little growth, but the growth was not GDP driven or much growth driven. Growth was there, but the growth is not growth driven itself or GDP driven itself. Now we are going to analyze the industrial sector, the plight of industrial sector. There was a process called deindustrialization happening at the time of British government. Deindustrialization means they are giving importance to the industrial sector. There was good industrial potential for the Indian economy at that time. There were many industries, iron and steel industry, textile industry, jute industry prevailing in India. Tata Iron and Steel Company was incorporated in 1907. A few other industries in the field of sugar, cement, paper, etc. was emerged during or after the Second World War. But there was a process called deindustrialization of the industry. What is called deindustrialization of industry? There is a huge potential for the industrial sector in India. There was a huge number of industries existing there, but they are not given importance to that existing industries, and they are not given any importance to the capital good industry. There was an absence of the promotion or the growth of capital goods industries there. So, the industrial sector did not have earned any growth at that time. The plight of industries at the time of British rule was also very backward. Like agriculture sector, the contribution of the industrial sector to gross domestic product and gross value added was very low, and they did not significantly contributed anything to the gross domestic product or GDP of the country. They are in a backward position. And their area of operation was also very limited, and it was scattered in some part of Gujarat, some part of Maharashtra. They were not active in widespread in India, and they are concentrating somehow in the northern part of the Indian geography. That was a very drawback, and the public sector was not also given, government was also not given any importance to the industries at that time. So, industrial sector does not give any significant contribution to the GDP and GV at that time, and compared compared to agriculture sector, the contribution of the industrial sector was lower than the agriculture sector at that time. It is a very backward trend or bad trend to that at that time. Next, we are going to analyze the status of foreign trade. The tie of India with other neighboring countries. At ancient time itself, India has kept a good and cordial relationship with the many countries outside. They have trading relationship with many countries. They especially exporter of primary product such as raw materials, cotton, wool, sugar, indigo, jute, etc. They focus upon the export promotion and import substitution right before the British came, and also in the ancient time. But after the British came, they reduced their ties with many neighboring countries. They were export promotion to certain countries such as Sri Lanka, Persia, Iran, China and British itself. They limited their export promotion strategies to certain countries which the British people or British government liked or British government promoted, and they were not making trade in the sense they like, or in the other sense they are making trade in favor of the British government or the British people like. They exported raw materials in surplus to the countries where the British government has a favorable relationship, and they were ignoring the previous neighborhood countries where they have a trade relationship. It affected the Indian economy very bad, in the bad sense. Export promotion strategies were in the expense of their own country itself, and they were benefiting only the British economy. The export promotion strategies they were focusing upon from the ancient time itself does not earn any benefit to our home country or our mother country India, and it was in the expense of our own resources or in the expense of our own country, and they were giving any gain to the British economy itself. Even at the time of British rule itself, there was export surplus, but the export surplus was at the huge cost of India's economy or India's GDP. It was a backward or bad trend for our economy, and there was in the domestic market also there was not there did not result in a flow of gold or silver into India. And domestic market there was a scarcity of goods like kerosene and other basic things were scarce in our economy or our market, and there was not any flow of silver and gold to India, but there was flow of gold and silver to the British people. So our export promotion strategies and import substitution strategies were at the expense of our own cost, our own money, and it benefited the British economy a lot. Now we are going to analyze the demographic condition of the Indian economy. Demography, the word demography means population. We all know that India ranked first in the sense of population. We are the most populated country in the world. Right before the British came also there was a huge amount of population in the country, because of the health sector was backward. Demographic transition means how the people get evolved or how the young aged population and young population are maintaining each other. The ratio of the aged population and young population in the total population is called the demographic transition. We all know that India is now in a better position even though it's the most populated country in the world. India in the sector of health sector is very maintaining a good and healthy economy in the terms of health sector. The strategies adopted by the health sector for controlling the airborne, waterborne diseases are noticeable. So in that sense, India is a healthy economy, even though it is the most populated economy. The most populated economy does not mean that the economy is in the condition of the health and other sectors. The health economy is moving forward in the terms of health sector. In the first stage of India is now in the second stage of demographic transition. So we are maintaining a low birth rate and death rate. At the first stage of demographic transition, there was high birth rate and high death rate. People are the number of people born in each year and each second is at a high number, and the people dying at the time of that period was also very high. There was not a much developed health sector at that time. British came to India and they introduced some positive aspect into our economy. They started to build new hospital for our country and everything, and it benefited us in a lot and in a better way, and we progressed in terms of the demographic condition in a better way. Now we are in a stable position. Our birth rate also is under control, and our death rate is now also in the control. At the time of British rule, birth rate or infant mortality rate. There is a term called infant mortality rate. How many infants in 1,000 per birth is dying in each year? Infant mortality rate at the time of British rule was 218 per 1,000 people, and now it is reduced into 33 per 1,000 people. Also, the life expectancy rate and the average age of the people that is living, average number of years the people living is also increased now. It is a positive indicator of the growing health sector or good health sector. Now the I think 60 plus is the life expectancy rate. Right before this, at the time of British rule, it was 30 plus, and now we have expanded our life expectancy rate, means that we are performing better in the terms of health facilities and other things. So the infant mortality rate prevailing in India has reduced and the life expectancy rate was increased. It can be considered as a positive indicator of the health sector. Now we can go into the occupational structure. By occupational structure, we mean the distribution of working persons across different sectors. Different sectors means agriculture sector, industrial sector and manufacturing sector. In the beginning also we also analyzed that most of the people in the villages, about 85% of the people depend upon the agriculture sector. Also in the occupational structure also most of the people depend upon the agriculture sector. 70 to 75% of the people depend upon the primary sector or agriculture sector. 10% of the people depend upon the manufacturing sector, and remaining 20% of the people depend upon the service sector for their livelihood. So agriculture sector contributed hugely in the occupational structure of our country. And even though most of the people depend upon the agriculture sector for livelihood, or the occupational structure was dominated by the agrarian or farmer population, there was a regional decline or regional variation in most of some places. Then at that time in the Madras presidency, comprising of the present day Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala and Karnataka, there was a decline in the agriculture sector or workforce depending upon the agrarian sector. At the same time, we can see that the workforce in the agriculture sector in the Orissa, Rajasthan and Punjab region was very high. So there was a regional variation in agriculture sector, industrial sector and also in the service sector also. And noticeably we can see that in the Madras presidency, the workforce dependency on the agriculture sector was very low, and in the region Orissa, Rajasthan and Punjab region, the dependence of the people on the agrarian sector was very high. Now we are going to discuss what happened to the infrastructure facilities in the time of British rule. The British people give utmost importance for the development of various infrastructure facilities. Even though they focus upon their own benefits, the smooth supply of the raw materials and for mobilizing army, it benefited Indian people also. Indian people who were not familiar with much infrastructure facilities or modern amenities, once the British introduced various things to India, started to benefit from that. They also started to go for long distance travel, which was not familiar for them at that time. British has introduced many things in India like postals, telegraph, railway lines, etc. Their main aim was to mobilize the long distance trade and also mobilize the army. And their main aim was to also supply the raw materials to their home country at low cost by introducing railway line. But the railway line also helped the Indian people and Indian farmers by facilitating the commercialization of agriculture and by reducing the cost of traveling for the long distance.